Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar Vet and to VETchat. Really pleased today to have Tanya Michelsen on with us, who is a Senior Research Director at Kynetec. Some of you may not know that name. Tanya's dad actually founded CM Research, which has been doing fantastic research in the animal health space for many, many years. Earlier on today, I was researching on a second generation, possibly to then become a third generation vet. And I think we've got second or third generation market researcher here today, Tanya. So thank you so much for coming on. We've also got Buddy here who may want to make some comments during the podcast. So he can be quite difficult in his questioning. I will be much more gentle with you, Tanya. So please let people know a bit about your background.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. I'm a third generation market researcher. So my granddad was a market researcher. My dad then founded CM Research back in 2010, and then yeah, I just naturally ended up in this wonderful space, and it wasn't intended at all. But yes, so a bit about me. So I work for Kynetec. They acquired CM Research last year, so that's our connection to that company, and I solely focus on animal health research. So that's basically mainly predominantly companion animal research. So speaking directly to veterinarians or pet owners, any kind of influencer stakeholder within the animal health space. So that's our sole focus.
And I think many people will know CM Research, but of course, before that, you were working for Ipsos, which is a very famous market research company, which covers pretty much everything. So have you enjoyed just being able to really focus just on one area rather than trying to do everything?
Yeah, exactly. So I worked at Ipsos for a number of years, kind of started out as a grad there. I initially actually started my career at CM Research, and I switched over to Ipsos, and I spent a number of years there. And then I worked in a whole bunch of different areas. My main focus in terms of the area that I was in was mainly on a kind of brand and communications research, understanding kind of brand strategy or communications effectiveness, lots of different sectors. And then in the middle of that, I went to a youth-focused agency, solely focused on understanding Gen Z and millennial audiences. So I led the brand research team there. That was very exciting and kind of honing in on one specific audience rather than a sector. And then after that, I decided to come to the lovely Surrey, where a CM Research are based, and I joined CM Research probably around 5 or 6 years ago. And then CM Research solely focused on animal health space. So it's been my sole focus since then.
And I think it's great. I remember being at an event and one of the people was talking about research for Gen Z, because actually as clients, they really are different from perhaps some of the earlier generations. They're very digitally focused, so they actually demand when they go into a veterinary practice that they have a digital experience, but also will spend quite a lot of money on their pet because they see it very much as part of their family. You know, that kind of shift and almost anthropomorphization of pets as, you know, continued generation to generation to get stronger and stronger. So it must have been fascinating to work in that area, but to be able to bring that expertise also into this animal space. Have you found that to be a useful thing that you've done working in the youth site business as well?
Yes, absolutely. It feels like there's a lot of buzz around the new generation of pet owners, particularly since COVID and the pandemic. We saw a lot of first-time pet owners across the kind of early millennial and Gen Z audiences. So given that's been the highest increase there, they are the next generation of pet owners. So it's definitely on most of our clients' agendas to understand how different are they? How should they be communicated with? What are their needs? And actually, I was at the London Vet Show last year, did a talk at the conference speaking exclusively about Gen Z and preventative health. So educating the audience about Generation Z pet owners, how they differ in terms of their attitudes or behaviors versus other generations. And that was really interesting, really, really interesting. And we see lots of really, really cool kind of differences within our current trackers. So, for example, in terms of prevention, so Gen Z are the least likely to adopt preventative measures, even if it's flea tick controls or taking the pet to the vet for regular checkups. So we actually see that increase significantly across generations. However, not all hope is lost, because Gen Z are actually most engaged in prevention in terms of wanting to understand more about it, wanting to understand more about how that's linked to preventing and keeping their pets healthy. So preventing specific diseases or conditions. They're most likely to actually spend more on the pets, having more information on prevention and the impact. They want to have these conversations, but they also come from a point of distrust. So with that means that they're also most likely to be questioning what their vet is recommending to them. So there's a bit more of a conversation discourse within the clinic. So a little bit more effort and attention needs to be dedicated, but there comes a challenge with that, because there is no time. There's no more time that vets can actually spend within a clinic, and also lots of conversations regarding nutritional recommendations, or even recommendations towards preventative measures such as routine health checkups. We see that those conversations are also in decline. Veterinarians are having less of those conversations because of all the existing pressures that are posed within a vet visitation. So there's waves of kind of challenges, there's needs, but there's also meeting kind of in the middle, having that expectation that not all the effort will be able to be invested because there's other things at play.
It's really fascinating. And of course, some of that is well founded. We obviously, I did the first VIP pet health plan in the UK in, I think it was 98, 99. And obviously also as a dermatologist, I use a lot of flea products, particularly if an animal is flea allergic. Of course, you should be on these very regularly. But I think there is now an indication that there's also environmental issues with using flea treatments on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. So I think it's right that we're sort of reinvestigating that, and because you obviously the trust factor is really important, isn't it? And if trust is lost in a profession, in a brand, it's very hard to get that back again, isn't it? I was talking to somebody yesterday who'd worked for Arthur Anderson, and one bad case, a really big case, went against them, and it closed the company down. So trust in companies is massive, isn't it? It's really important.
Yeah, and I mean, trust lost is incredibly challenging to gain again. I mean, that trust comes from a lot of different places. It also comes from experience. These new first-time pet owners have not had the experience of owning a pet before, have not had the experience of trusting that recommendation. So they will take a little bit more time to kind of ease in. With regards to some of the factors that could kind of influence what they engage in, you kind of mentioned environment. We know that value is also important, across all generations, but ethics is the factor that's actually important for Gen Z, which doesn't sit within the top 3 or 4 across other generations. So there is definitely a shift in terms of priorities. It doesn't mean that value or trust is less important. There's just other factors at play that could be kind of mixing things up a bit more for this generation in how they approach vets, they approach the clinic, or they approach products or services that they engage in.
Tanya, that's really fascinating. I know you've been doing quite a big survey across a number of countries in Europe. In the UK, unfortunately, I don't think we can say we're in Europe anymore, can we? We're not in the EU, we're still in Europe and the US. And it was very much around looking at vets and pet owners. And we've gone through, obviously, the pandemic, we've gone through certainly financial pressures, the cost of living crisis over the last few years. And all of that, I know, has impacted relationships and money that people have available for pet care and so on. So I'd love to hear some of the research, and I'm sure many of the listeners would like to as well, from a veterinary, but also very interestingly from that pet owner perspective as well.
Yeah, of course. So we've been running a global study since December 2022 um, among veterinarians and among pet owners. So far, we've interviewed thousands of vets and thousands of pet owners. The sole purpose of the study is to understand how current cost of living pressures, financial pressures, the general environment kind of post pandemic is really influencing pet care decisions, and also sentiment, and how sentiment is influencing what happens within the vet clinic, what happens with regards to the recommendations that are made, what happens with regards to the choices that are made towards the pet, both in terms of kind of short-term impact and also long-term impact. So, I mean, we cover several different areas. One of the interesting things that's really come across is that we've fielded 3 waves now. The 4th wave is due to field this month. And every wave we have seen shifts and changes. And we've been fielding a wave twice a year. Now, many would say, oh, things are not going to change that fast, but we have seen changes across each country that we survey, which includes the UK, US, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. So we survey a few. What's most interesting right now is that concern felt because of cost of living pressures is still prominent. You know, we find that over 60% of pet owners are still concerned and just about managing. 1 in 5 are very concerned with their regards to their personal finances and are struggling to keep up.
Yeah.
Now, there's been no change in terms of that general concern. We have seen some lessening in terms of top levels of concern felt. Now, for me, I take that as we are just adjusting to a new normal. The level of concern was quite high at first because we were so unsure as to what the future might hold. Now, we've seen over the last couple of years, you know, over 70% of pet owners have made changes to pet care decisions as a direct result of the financial pressures that they're feeling as individuals. And that hasn't changed. It's still around 70% over the past 2 years. So they've making changes, they have made changes, they're adjusting. However, concern is very much still dictating the decisions that they're making. And we're seeing that from a pet owner point of view, but also from a vet point of view. When we ask them what's going on within the vet clinic, they're seeing a reduction in vet visits, they're seeing impact on preventative health, and also pet health outcomes regarding conditions that are not being treated, or the treatment is being delayed or just stopped altogether because the pet owner just simply can't afford it.
No, it's really interesting. I think there was, obviously you started the study in 22, which I think would have been about the time that the Ukraine-Russian war started. And we'd had that previous sort of pandemic bonanza where everybody went out and bought pets. And I think there was a lot of money sloshing around, certainly in the UK, with the furlough system and all those things. But obviously then we've had this cost of living crisis, and people just correctly have sort of eased back a bit. Having been through a few recessions in the past, it was always felt that the veterinary profession was quite insulated from it because people would stop going on holidays, you know, going and doing nice things because the pet was so important in their life that they would still carry on doing a lot of the treatments and therapies and so on. But do you think that that has perhaps shifted a bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has shifted. Don't get me wrong, the first changes that a pet owner will make are to other areas of their life. You know, so cutbacks on personal expenditure, leisure activities, holidays. But when that is made and things are still tight, they are making changes. And it's mainly impacting vet visitation, for example, going less so, or researching things online before going to the vet. We've also seen pet owners even space out medication or stopping preventative measures. Another area that it's impacting is pet food. You know, there's a third of pet owners have switched pet food. There's been switching down on even therapeutic or wellness diets as well, or stopping that altogether. So there's impact across the whole system of pet care. There could be small changes that are being made regarding pet care, but the future health outcomes with regards to declining prevention or stopping some of those treatment measures for that pet who is sick or has a chronic condition, that is unknown of how long that will continue going on for. So that is the kind of worry. How long will this sentiment and this concern be guiding or fueling these decisions for? And will changes revert back to normal, in a year or so when things kind of seem a bit better? Or will these behaviors kind of stick and
Yes.
continue? That is the kind of worry that we don't know. We can't
Yeah.
know.
We end up with a new normal. Have you got any sort of guesses around that? Are market researchers allowed to look into the future, or do you really need to just base it very much on science?
Yeah, I mean, we're allowed to look into the future. We're allowed to ask whether they feel that they would do something, whether they're likely to do something. All of this is stated behavior. Now, we don't know how the context around next year or the year after that or the year after that might then change that initial expectation of what I might do. So there's a certain level of prediction that we can kind of say, or hypothesis
Yes.
testing, but any hypothesis can be true or not true.
Yeah.
So it's all guesswork, really. We must be, continuously keeping a tabs in how the general trajectory of change is. So, for example, for the last 3 waves, we've been able to see how things are changing, even at local level. We can't assess an overall EU picture of how things might change. Every context needs to be assessed at a local level because one context doesn't dictate every
Yeah.
behavior across every country. So that's been quite interesting too.
Yeah. And of course, within those 6, 7 countries, the economy will be doing better and worse in some
Yes.
rather than others, won't it? Have you seen any
Yeah.
trends within that? As
Yeah.
economies improve, are some of them doing, some of the countries are, if you like, having more positive sort of veterinary experiences than others?
Yes, absolutely. We have seen some changes in the positive, some in
Yeah.
the UK, some in the US, for example, very small changes.
Yeah.
We do see that the behavior that has changed has remained. There's been
Yeah.
no kind of kind of withdrawal of behavior or kind of going back to normal just yet, because concern levels are still very much kind of at the forefront and high. But we have seen a change in Spain, for example. So Spain is the only country right now where we've seen kind of inflationary increases. Concern in Spain is the highest, is around half who are very concerned and struggling to keep up. And we see that kind of having an impact on behavior as well. We see that pet owners in Spain are the most likely to, for example, state that they haven't visited the vet in the past 12 months because it's become too costly. And we've seen an increase that over time. So now it's around 1 in 4 that state that it's become too costly. Now that's quite an interesting question because the word of too costly will only apply to situations when there is absolutely no funds available to go. We all know that if there's a particularly urgent need, pet owners will find the resources because what you mentioned earlier, the pet is an absolute crucial part of the family life, and it's something that you will invest in because of the care and support they also provide too. So it's kind of reciprocal. But in Spain, we've seen this shift. So it's just something to kind of watch out for. I've also seen changes the last 3 waves. Let's kind of see what it looks like this year, whether it's kind of leveling out or we do actually see more pet owners adopting not to take their pet to the vet in terms of a decline in preventative measures because of the costs associated with going. And of course, as we spoke about before, it's impossible to know what that could mean in the future, but it's just a risk. It's just a risk
Yeah.
that we should be aware of where the trajectory could go as a result of behavior that's happening now.
No, that's really fascinating. The beginning of this, we had Buddy on my knee. Not everybody's watching. Some people are listening. So Buddy is the cat who adopted my wife and I during the pandemic to find a quieter life. Ginger cat. And I know we share a lot of things in common. You also have a
Yes.
ginger cat who's decided to come and live with you.
Kibo. Well, no, he was adopted at the beginning. He didn't choose us. Yeah, he was chosen.
But I think if he didn't like you, he would
Oh,
by now have
yeah.
left. So I think
Of
he
course.
he has adopted you because you actually
He
never
loves
own a
living
cat.
here.
You
No,
never
he
own
loves
a
it.
cat.
We've always had pets. So my family have always had pets, dogs. We've got 2 Alsatians. We've had like 3 dogs in the past, and 3 cats, fish. There's always multiple pets in the household. So they're always around. But right now we've only got 1 cat and 2 dogs. So I think this is I know. I don't know what's going on. I reckon there'll be a new one maybe soon.
Who is the boss of the household?
Well, I'm currently living with my parents right now because my house is being renovated.
Yeah.
So I'm here for the next 2 to 3 months. But who's the boss? Oh, God. Kibo. Yeah,
It
cats.
usually is the
Cats.
cat,
Yes,
isn't it?
cats. Of course, cats. Yes. He's feisty. He knows, he can hold his ground.
Yes.
He knows that he has he's everyone's favorite, or he likes to believe so. And he just kind of roams around, and I always find him sleeping on my side of the bed, for example. He just knows he can get away with it.
They do become really big parts of our family, don't we? I think
Yeah, of
the
course.
British always classed as a nation of pet lovers.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we've explored attitudes as well with regards to how what are the reasons to acquiring a pet, for example, or the role that pets actually hold within the household. It's about companionship, but it's that kind of reciprocal relationship that's very important. Now, kind of going back to the Gen Z conversation that we had earlier, for Generation Z, we've seen an increase, so a more significant number of Gen Z pet owners that actually adopt a pet because of the kind of mental health benefits that it has for them. Now, it's not something that has been spoken so much about the past, but for Gen Z, it's really about the kind of holistic health, so mental health and physical health together. Now, when we come to kind of thinking about even the qualities that they most admire in a veterinarian, we're seeing that medical skills and knowledge, which has been number one, across all generations, is declining across generations. So now it's lowest point among Gen Z, and actually takes care of my pet's mental health and physical health. It's actually increasing in importance for Gen Z. So it's kind of shifting the landscape in terms of even the qualities that are seen to be most important in a vet, and that relationship, and also the purpose that pet plays in your life or that household as well.
I think there's no doubt there's so many studies now done. Just the simple act. I was doing my Blofeld impersonation before, stroking Buddy. It helps to reduce stress, cortisone levels and everything. So it is it's massively important. And I think also it's important. I think somebody once said, people don't care how much you know, but they want to care. They want to know how much you care. And I think in a caring profession like veterinary, it is so important that we have that empathetic ability to talk to clients in a way that makes them feel that they're being listened to and understood.
Yeah, absolutely. And those kind of communication skills, I think are in need, and training to how to kind of handle difficult conversations, particularly, in terms of our cost of living tracker regarding financial decisions.
Yes.
It's really, really tough. We find that only about 1 in 3 pet owners have actually mentioned or even spoken about costs of treatment. Most people, it's not something that you want to be vocal about or even admit to the fact that you could be, struggling or thinking this is so expensive, right? We're very sensitive to that. But when everyone is experiencing the same troubles, vets and pet owners are equally as concerned, then, there needs to be a spark within that kind of vet consultation room to make them feel that there is a sense of shared experience between them, to make sure that there is that level of comfort. But again, there's so many pressures within the consultation room already to kind of ask more of everyone. It's just really, really challenging. And also the reasons why they haven't really spoken about it is either they don't feel comfortable, either they just don't have that, maybe that even that relationship to be able to be that forefront about it. But veterinarians do know there might be kind of a sense of shared experience without the words being vocalized.
Yeah.
But we do know that like all vets, 99% of vets have been offering alternative options when pet owners can't afford treatment. So it's very much a proactive behavior that we're seeing from veterinarians as well. I think just pet owners might need to be a little bit more vocal about it to make sure that that communication is there and those options and therefore offered at the end of the day.
It was always very much don't x-ray, people's pockets, offer different options. And actually now one of the key areas that a lot of vets are talking about, even, when I'm talking to them, is this whole idea of contextualized care, which is very much making sure it's the right care, not only, for the pet, but also for the client as well. It is a partnership, and we can't just railroad pricing and options through, because the pet is, is a part of the family's home, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's so tough because, vet practices are under pressure, cost increases across the board, products, even the running costs. We're still seeing that increase over time.
Yeah.
We've seen some lessening, but it's still very much higher than it was a year ago or even 2 years ago. So the bottom line is suffering. We see that most are still saying that they are doing worse off this year than they were last. Things are improving a little bit, but there's still the majority outweigh the few that actually say that they are doing better. So in that context, those discussions are really, really difficult. And that's where we kind of see the support kind of needed by from suppliers or manufacturers, in having more communication around price increases, in kind of supporting them in other ways to be able to kind of elicit the more positive relationship with pet owners and ensure that they've got the tools to be able to offer those solutions as well.
Tanya, it's a fascinating area, albeit, it's a challenging area. But the more information we have, which obviously you're supplying in bucket loads, is really, really useful. So thanks for all the great work that you're doing at Kynetec, formerly CM Research. I believe founder of the company, your dad, has just retired as well.
Yes, he has. He's free.
Do pass on, I think, all of our best wishes as vets for all the great work that he's done over the last 10 or 15 years.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tanya, for coming on.
It's been a pleasure. Your time's
very valuable, so thanks for that. And obviously, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully see you on a podcast or a webinar very soon.